I'm going to tell you something that took me a long time to say out loud. I spent 20 years waiting for this. Not dramatically, not in a way I'd have admitted at the time, but somewhere underneath the school runs and the dinner schedules and the permission slips and the sick days, there was a quiet, guilty voice that said, "Someday I'll have time. Someday it'll be my turn." And then it was, and I didn't know what to do with it. I want to talk to the version of me who was standing in that exact place, the one who had finally gotten what she'd been waiting for, and felt, instead of free, strangely hollow, unmoored, like someone had removed the scaffolding and revealed that I hadn't actually built anything underneath it yet. If you're in that place right now, I want you to stay with me, because I have some things to say. So, to the version of me from a few years back, the one standing in the quiet house with nowhere to be and no idea who she was anymore, this is for you. Lesson 1. The time you wanted isn't the same as the time you have. Let me start here, because it's the thing that confused me most. You spent years imagining what you'd do with free time. You had a list, even if it lived only in the back of your mind. Read, walk, take a class, sit still without someone needing something. You pictured the time as a kind of gift, wrapped and waiting. But the free time you have now isn't the free time you imagined then. The time you imagined was a break, a breath, a pause inside a life that still had its shape. What you have now is something different. It's open time, uncontained time, time with no frame around it. And open time feels nothing like a break. A break is defined by what it interrupts. This time has nothing to interrupt. That's the part no one warned you about. I remember sitting down on a Tuesday afternoon with a book I'd been meaning to read for 3 years, and I couldn't get past the first page. Not because the book was bad, because part of my brain kept waiting for the interruption that didn't come, kept scanning for the need that wasn't there. I'd spent so long reading in stolen 15-minute windows that I didn't know how to read in an open hour. The time you wanted was a reward inside the old life. The time you have is the beginning of a new one, and you're not equipped for it yet. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because no one told you they were different things. If you're watching this, and you've been sitting in your free time, feeling vaguely guilty, vaguely anxious, vaguely like you should be doing something, that's not ingratitude. That's your nervous system still running on a schedule that doesn't exist anymore. You haven't failed your freedom, you just haven't learned its grammar yet. Lesson 2. The structure wasn't the cage, it was the container. Here's something I needed someone to say to me directly, so I'm saying it to you. You thought the structure was the problem, the calendar full of other people's needs, the days organized around drop-offs and pickups, and the 100 small logistics of a life that revolved around children. You thought, if I could just get out from under all of that, I'd be able to breathe. And you did get out from under it, and instead of breathing, you felt like the floor had disappeared. That's because the structure wasn't just a burden. It was also the thing that told you who you were every single day. It told you what time to get up. It told you when you were needed. It gave the hours their shape. It answered the question, without you ever having to ask it, of what you were for. When my youngest left, I didn't lose a schedule. I lost a daily answer to a question I hadn't realized I was dependent on. The question was, does anyone need me today? And for 20 years, the answer had been immediate, constant, and loud. And then one morning it wasn't. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was the absence of an answer. You're not lost because you're weak. You're not lost because you did something wrong. You're lost because the container you lived inside for 2 decades just dissolved, and you're standing in the open air for the first time since you can remember. That feeling of lostness? That's not a flaw. It's the accurate response to a genuine disorientation. It makes complete sense. Lesson 3. You don't know what you like anymore, and that's honest. This one is harder to say, but you need to hear it. If someone asked you right now, what do you enjoy? What do you want to do with your days? I think you'd struggle to answer. Not because you're depressed, though that can be part of it. Not because you're shallow, though you might accuse yourself of that. But because you genuinely don't know. And you don't know because you haven't been asked to know for a very long time. For years, what you enjoyed was largely organized around what was possible between everything else. A walk that fit in the window. A show you could watch in pieces. A hobby that could be picked up and put down, and picked up again without losing the thread. You became very good at enjoying things conditionally, partially, around the edges. And now someone has handed you the whole canvas and said, paint whatever you want. And you're standing in front of it holding the brush, and your mind is genuinely blank. I went through 3 different things before I found something that felt like mine. I started a project and abandoned it. I took up something I'd always meant to try and found it hollow. I spent one entire afternoon sitting in the garden feeling like a fraud, like someone performing the idea of a woman who had reclaimed her life, while actually feeling nothing in particular. The fraudulence passed, but it took longer than I expected. What I needed someone to tell me was this: you are not going to rediscover yourself in a weekend. The person you were before the children isn't sitting in a box somewhere, waiting to be unpacked intact. She changed. You changed. And the person on the other side of this isn't a retrieval. She's a construction. And construction takes time. And it involves false starts. And it's allowed to look messy while it's happening. You don't owe anyone a found self on a timeline. Not your partner, not your friends, not yourself. Lesson 4. The lost feeling is not a warning, it's a threshold. One more thing, and this is the one I most wish someone had said to me. The feeling of being lost, that specific, disorienting, slightly frightening sensation of not knowing who you are when you're not needed, feels like a problem. It presents itself as a problem. Your brain frames it as a problem to be solved, a condition to be fixed, a state to be escaped as quickly as possible. It is not a problem. It is a threshold. The lost feeling is what it feels like to be standing at the exact point where the old identity ends and the new one hasn't started yet. It is the space between. And the space between is not nothing. It's not a failure state. It's the necessary passage between 2 different versions of yourself. And the only way out of it is through it, at the pace it requires. I spent months trying to hurry out of it, trying to fill the space with projects and plans and forward motion, as if moving fast enough would mean I'd never had to stand still in it, and it didn't work. Every time I outran it, it was waiting for me when I slowed down. The morning I stopped trying to escape it was a quiet one. I was sitting on the back steps with a cup of tea just before the light changed, and I let myself feel it fully. The lostness, the not knowing, the strange grief of a life that had been full and was now quiet. I let it be there without trying to fix it or reframe it or turn it into a lesson about growth, and it was still there. But it was bearable, more than bearable. It was honest. That honesty, that willingness to sit in the threshold without running, was the beginning of something. Not the end of the lost feeling, the beginning of being someone who could carry it without being consumed by it. Stepping out of the letter. I know I've been talking to a version of myself, but if you're watching this, and any piece of that recognition landed for you, the open time that doesn't feel like freedom, the structure you didn't realize was holding you together, the blank canvas, the lost feeling you've been trying to outrun, then I want to step out of the letter for a moment and speak to you directly. You are not broken for feeling this. You are not ungrateful for the time you have. You are not behind on your own recovery or reinvention or whatever word the world wants to use for what you're going through. You are standing in a threshold, and the threshold is not the destination. But it is not nothing either. No one prepared you for this specific version of loss. Not because they didn't care, but because the culture we live in doesn't have good language for it. It has language for grief that comes from death, and language for triumph that comes from freedom, and almost nothing for the strange in-between of losing a role you loved to the ordinary success of having done it well. Your child is out in the world. That's what you worked for. That's what all of it was for. And you are standing in the quiet house with all that love still running, and nowhere particular to put it this morning. That is one of the most human things there is. It doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be named. And then it needs to be sat with, honestly, for as long as it takes. You are not lost because something went wrong. You are lost because something ended that you loved deeply. And the thing that comes next hasn't announced itself yet. It will. Not on a schedule, not in the way anyone can predict. But the threshold is not permanent. You'll know when you've crossed it, not because everything will be resolved, but because the lostness will start to feel less like falling and more like walking. You're still walking. If something in this landed for you, I'd be glad to know. There's more of this kind of conversation here whenever you need it.